Okay, let's hope. Good afternoon and welcome to the February 1st regular meeting of council. The city of Parksville again recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. Before we begin this afternoon, I wish to recognize that February the 15th to the 21st has been proclaimed Chamber of Commerce of the Week in the city of Parksville. Chamber of Commerce Week recognizes the outstanding contributions chambers make to communities across the province and is an opportunity for chambers to showcase their work on behalf of the business communities. A strong local business community is a key driver of our economic prosperity, creating jobs and opportunities for residents and supporting community growth. The Parksville and District Chamber of Commerce is dedicated to strengthening the city of Parksville's business community, helping our community thrive each year. Chamber members dedicate volunteer hours and service both to local business and the wider community. Congratulations to the Chamber. So, moving right on to the consent agenda. We have 4 items on the consent agenda. I'm prepared to take a motion for all 4 items. Councillor Patterson and seconded by Councillor O'Brien. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. I need to see Councillor, there we go. Can't go without seeing Councillor Wilson. Delegations. We have 1 delegation on the agenda, Broombusters Invasive Plant Society, update and request for support. Please. You're on mute. You have to unmute.
I am unmuted.
There you go.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Mayor Main and council members. I'm Joanne Sales, the Executive Director of Broombusters Invasive Plant Society. Many of you I've seen before and you know why I'm here. We want to say we appreciate Parksville's support of Broombuster volunteers since 2007, the second municipality to do that. We thank you. Can we see the PowerPoint? Okay, it's coming up. Last year during the pandemic, Broombusters had to make adjustments, and we did not have large community events. Instead, we gave each volunteer a lopper to keep for the season, so that was safe. Most people cut alone or with a small group, and we always maintained physical distancing. So it worked, and over 400 volunteers cut broom for over 5,000 hours. I still don't see the, oh, here we go. Okay, there we are. Okay, so the next screen, please. Next screen. We are all learning, aren't we? And the next screen.
Next one.
Next screen, please. Okay, so I'd like to do a quick review about Scotch broom and why we spend so much time getting rid of it. So broom spreads rapidly. It's an alien, non-native invasive plant, and it spreads anywhere in the sun. A single plant can produce 18,000 seeds, which are viable for decades in the soil. So these are all sites that you're familiar with: vacant property, investment properties, absentee owners on farms, and on hydro lines and along the highway, any place that was deforested and the broom got in. So this is the kind of problem that we're dealing with. Next slide, please. Okay, so some of the reasons why broom is such a problem is it grows so huge quickly. So it strangles our native species, which are really nowhere near as hardy and fast growing. So you'll see that small field of camas is no competition for the power of Scotch broom. Next slide. Also, broom is a serious fire hazard. It has lots of dry leaves and a high oil content. So a quote from Terry Peters, whoops, if we can go back. Quote from Terry Peters is that Scotch broom is a volatile flash fuel. It will increase a wildfire's fuel load, escalate the fire's intensity, compromise fire situations and make fires more difficult to fight. So it's extremely important we get control of it to prevent forest fires. And as you can see from the square on the field on the left side of the screen, that's just a dry summer, August, okay, and you can see how flammable that broom would be. Next screen. Okay, Scotch broom grows faster than young trees, and it inhibits and prevents forest regrowth. So you can see how the broom has gotten into the young forest there that's trying to grow and will prevent those trees from growing. And broom on utility corridors creates an easy path for fire to travel across the island. So we have a serious safety issue. Next slide, please. How bad does it get? Really bad. Broom has created major environmental damage on almost every continent, as we see here in New Zealand. And even though we know better, it could happen here. In 2009, when I first appeared as a delegation in Courtenay, the mayor asked me, "Why are you so passionate about this?" And I immediately knew the answer: forests, farms, and the future. But our forests and farms are in more danger now than they were in 2009. As we all know, the climate change clock is ticking and we're running out of time. We know what to do. In farming, practice regenerative agriculture, never leave land bare, return to smaller farms, use renewable energy to power our lives, and massively increase forest cover on the planet. As important as this is, how does it relate to broombusters? And it actually really does. I'd like to spend some time talking about the growth habits of Scotch broom. Next slide, please. Some of my examples are in the surrounding Parksville area. Forgive me, I needed examples, and here's where they are. Okay, broom does not grow in the shade, but in the sun, broom wins. So on degraded soil, only broom will thrive. So when forests and trees are removed, large or small, in the Pacific Northwest, if no one is caring for the land, eventually broom will dominate the landscape. This is Spring Hill Road off of Church Road, and this is what visitors see from the Coombs-Parksville Trail. The recipe is remove the forest cover, degrade the soil with heavy machinery, do nothing to restore the vegetation, and broom wins, and we lose. Next slide, please. This is Alberni Highway. I don't know how many of you remember back 10 years ago, or maybe a little bit more, but Alberni Highway was lined with broom on all sides, and huge broom. You can see that broom is almost as high as the volunteers. One of the things that helped the Broombusters get control of it is that there were large stands of trees in multiple places, and trees will stop the spread of Scotch broom. So volunteers worked very hard. We had like 9/10 of the broom removed from Alberni Highway. You'll still see broom, but it is so much better. It doesn't look like that up and down the highway. Next slide. But alas, okay, there was a huge area of forest cleared for development, leaving soil degraded and bare between Spunkies and the interchange. So in 2020, volunteers tried to stop the spread of seeds onto the bare soil. Next slide. But we were too late. This is a photo I took a week ago, and you can see how the broom is now on the other side of the fence, extensively growing. You can also see how the soil is nothing but rocks. Okay, the next slide, please. So we have a problem, and it's really a heartbreak to Broombuster volunteers. Heavy machinery damages and degrades the soil, and it was left bare. So the topsoil washed away in the heavy fall rainstorms, and the seeds which were dormant for decades now sprout, and our work was in vain. And as you guessed it, broom is one of the only plants that will grow there. Now here you can see also on the steep hill to the left that there are trunks of trees that were cut down even though it was really steep and it was going down towards a waterway. So again, we lose our topsoil, and the broom will take over that area. So our question is, why, when there is development like that, why do all the trees have to be removed? Okay, isn't it possible to have left the trees in that steep riparian zone and along the highway exit from the freeway? That's what we like to talk about wherever it is, inside, outside of Parksville. Next slide. So we are in favor of growth, and we're not saying no to development, but Canada has to protect itself. In comparison to other countries, our priceless forest and farmland is cheap. There seems to be a pattern: buy forested land, harvest the trees to pay for it, and then sit on it until it can be sold for real estate. If it's agricultural land, put in a cattle farm. But land is not an investment on our small planet. Soil is not dirt. There's no such thing as throw away acreage. So here's one more field, and this one's inside Parksville. Next slide, please. So this one everyone's familiar with. This one's the field down at the industrial resort site of Parksville. Over the years, I kept getting complaints to everybody saying, why don't you Broombusters go cut that? Well, we couldn't. It was private property, and besides, it was hopeless. That field was cleared decades ago for development and became the breeding ground for the unfortunate gorse infestation that spread several kilometers on Island Highway in Parksville. The problem with gorse is that it cannot be cut cannot be killed by cutting. So we're just wondering, wouldn't it be smarter if forests could stand until construction is about to begin? Such a law would be very beneficial to protect Canada's precious farmlands and forests. We also need laws that respect the soil and setbacks for riparian zones, permanently keep vital trees and forest stands for windbreaks, for soil containment, for birds, and to stop invasive plants, and to maintain our quality of life. Slide 15, or next one, next slide. So here's two photos that I've been showing since I started doing presentations. But in the past year, the circled areas, those forests are gone. It feels like our forests and trees all over Vancouver Island are being cut down like weeds. And it's a great loss to the beauty, health, and soul of our island. People are very disheartened by it. And Broombuster volunteers, we often feel that our work is in vain and we need help. Volunteers can cut broom, but only the government can protect the land, forest, waterways, watersheds, and wildlife. Establishing and upholding the laws and expectations regarding land use and land care, that's in the hands of elected officials. We know that no city council has control of all of this, but we just felt it was important to share with you what we volunteers are witnessing and experiencing. Next slide. It's so easy to forget how broom used to be everywhere. Okay, but here you can see this is the weigh scales. And you can see how much broom was there, and you can see how successful volunteers were in their efforts to get control of this invasive plant. And this is really for fire safety protection along in here, being along the main highway. So when volunteers feel supported, they come out in droves, and we want that enthusiasm to continue. Next slide. The problem is this, a couple of broom plants leads to this, which leads to this, and which leads to this, which is what we do not want. Next slide. So why do I cut broom? Why has it been so many, well over a decade? It's for my grandchildren and yours and their future. And I believe also that that's why you are on council. We Broombusters will keep at it this year, and we really appreciate your help in doing so. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Joanne, for your presentation. Always informative. And is there any questions from anybody on council? Councillor Frass.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I just want to say, Joanne, thank you very much for your presentation. I really appreciate getting to see the work that you guys do. And if you can extend the thanks to all the Broombuster volunteers, it's quite something else to see those pictures. And I got to say, it's quite sad to see too when that topsoil is taken away and how that land is left barren. I'm sorry that you guys are constantly battling against that too. It does seem like it's a never-ending battle. I hope that there's a chance that we can get on top of it at some point. But yeah, I appreciate that you, like you say, you're looking out for the future of our land for everybody, and it does keep our community safer and much more beautiful. So thanks so much, and I'd be glad to support however we can to help support your efforts of all the volunteers.
Thank you. Thank you for understanding it too, what I was presenting.
Yeah. Thank you so very much for everything that you and the organization does. It's just amazing work. It really is. So did you have something else you wanted to say?
If I may, just one more. I thought I was just going to give a chance for council to ask the two, but if there's nobody else, Joanne, is there any, are or Joan, is there any asks that you have of council? You're asking for our continued support, but recognizing like what is it that the city's been able to do for you? In my mind, I think.
You know, we work with Warren Payne, and he's wonderful as far as picking up piles that volunteers cut, you know, along the highways. The gorse situation is very difficult because it does require herbicides. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't die from cutting. So I know that the city is trying to deal with that, and we saw progress last year, and we really appreciate that because once gorse gets into areas, you know, on private land and so on, sometimes it just is never controlled. You know, it's just very, very hard to control. Broom, we can do something about. Gorse, we're glad that the city is starting to do it, and we would like to see that project completed as soon as it can be done. That's all. It's really, you know, the presentation today was really just an awareness of how important it is to try to maintain our soil and our forests, and for the quality of life, but also to help us in controlling invasive plants and, you know, maintaining the soil quality.
Thank you. Thank you again. We appreciate it, and best of luck for the upcoming season.
Thank you.
We correspondence now. We have one piece of correspondence on the agenda from the Island Health. It's regarding our draft bylaw to regulate hypodermic sharp needle distribution. I need a mover and a seconder to receive. Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Greer. All those in favor of receiving? Opposed? Thank you. Before we go any further, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce a motion related to this correspondence, and that the staff be directed to arrange a meeting with the Island Health's Vice President, Mr. Hansen, and council to discuss solutions to address the improperly discarded hypodermic needles in Parksville parks and public spaces. So I needed a seconder for that motion, and then we'll go from there. Councillor Fraz is seconding. Any discussion? Councillor Fraz, and then Councillor Patterson.
Thanks. I appreciate you bringing a motion like this forward. I got to say it was disappointing in reading the letter how they acknowledge that they should have invited us to the table. They say that they want to work with us, and they put forward their objectives, but they continue to ignore ours. It can't help me but think that perhaps it was intentional that we weren't invited, and the way they just describe it as a misstep without any explanation. So I definitely support your motion, and thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I echo a lot of what Councillor Fraz said. I think that unfortunately we need to try and come to some kind of understanding or terms, so getting together and at least trying to move forward with some help in our community, and that whether it be the sharps collection containers or the child and youth information and education and things like that. So at least getting together with one of the health officers and having a discussion and trying to keep in contact, I think is a really good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. And as well, I think it's very important at this time. We've exchanged a lot of correspondence and so forth, but I think we need to explain our own perspective face to face to the health officials and likewise to themselves. And I think that this has been lacking, and it's time for us to get to the table with them. And that's when we can maybe come to some collaboration of a solution to this problem. So I'm definitely in favor of setting up a meeting. I think it's a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate you making the motion, because I was going to ask if we need a motion today for this. So I support everything that everyone said about it. It's time that we speak to them, and it's unfortunate they left us out, but hopefully we'll get back on track and make some progress on this.
Thank you. I think it's important as well. I mean, obviously, because I made the motion, but they seem to have left us out of all of the conversations since we started with this whole proposal. As Councillor Fraz says, I'm not sure that it wasn't just an inconvenience, but having said that, hopefully Mr. Hansen will come forward and we will be able to meet with him and explain to him what we're thinking. And, you know, I'm not holding my breath on how far this will go, but at least, as Councillor O'Brien says, we at least have a shot at having them understand what we're saying. So I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Assistant Chief Tisdale.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, councillors. I'm here today, as per the agenda, to request council authorization to award a construction contract to Napit Industries to improve the working areas, drainage, usability, and accessibility within the fire department's training center. Recommendation is as per report.
Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder for the three recommendations. Councillor Chandler, Councillor Greer. Discussion. Go ahead, Councillor Fraz.
I just want to say that I'm in support of this project coming forward. I know we had looked at it once before and decided to put it off a bit for the timing of it, but I think it's a time to have this done. It'll be a great asset to the reputation of the training department on top of the training that the volunteers are able to maintain on our training ground. We've got a pretty wonderful training tower as it is, and I'm looking to support our volunteers however we're able. So I'm in support of it.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just a question through to our Assistant Fire Chief. The training center as it is, such type of thing, do we share this training center with the surrounding fire departments in the area, or is it exclusive to Parksville?
Through Your Worship, Councillor O'Brien, yes, we do share it with the other local fire departments. They have been training in there in the past, not over the last year with COVID, obviously, but they are using it and it's allowing us to do mutual aid training, is what we're looking for in the future.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to our CAO, please. This goes over our contingency budget. So the $45,000, I'm assuming, is able to be included in the budget? That's my first question.
If I may, Your Worship, yes, if council supports the request, the budget would be amended to increase the project by the $45,000.
Thank you. You indicated you had another.
Yes, please. Thank you, Your Worship. So once this contract has been tendered to the tenderer, what is the anticipated timeline of the project being completed? Does anyone know that one?
We'll ask the Assistant Chief.
Through Your Worship, Councillor Patterson, the timeline would be the month of April. So we're giving them 4 weeks to complete the project.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Chandler, and then I'll call the question.
Thank you, Worship. Just a comment. I'm really pleased to see this, especially just from that facility itself is a great training center. And I think with the new tower and, additional things that are added to it, I think we're going to see it being a bit of a benchmark as far as training centers here. So I think we should be really proud of what we have there. And we realize that means we train our people and our firefighters the right way. And I'm very excited about that. Thank you.
All right, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Russell, I think you're in virtual land there somewhere. There he is. Please.
If I may, Your Worship, for council consideration this evening is a follow-up report for the Music Café at Unit 2 at 631 Island Highway East. Since this application was originally presented to council, required notice has now occurred to provide an opportunity for public input. This is an application to add an entertainment endorsement to a food primary license for the Music Café. Since notice has been provided, no correspondence have been received. For council consideration is the recommendations per the agenda.
Thank you. Need a motion, mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Councillor Chandler, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. Discussion? Call the question then if there's no question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Mrs. Weeks, you're up.
Thank you. So this report is in accordance with Council Policy 2.30 regarding the disclosure of business conducted in closed council meetings and the recommendations as per the council agenda.
Need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. Discussion? All those in favor? Oh, sorry. Councillor Frass?
Thanks. I don't think I could let this one go without just speaking to it. It's something that makes me extremely happy to see. And I think the community is going to be extremely happy to see this as well, because there's always a lot of talk about closed meetings and what goes on behind those doors. And I know what it's like being on the other side of it when you don't know. And we've talked about being a very transparent council. Each of us, when we ran in the election, we spoke about how that's one of our aims and what we wanted to bring to the community. And when I look at this, the release of these closed meetings, it's very descriptive to what it goes on in those meetings. It's not just this high level, what the item was for the reason why we went into closed meetings. It's talking as much as it can about what the content, what the conversations that took place in there. So like I say, I think the community is going to be very happy to see this, and it's absolutely something I support. So thank you very much for all the work done to get this, this report out and get this out to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to make a comment? I want to thank staff for preparing this. I know there was a lot of hard work on this and getting it all done. I think just to carry on, sorry, with what Councillor Frass says, just goes to show, I mean, there's only certain things that we can have in closed meetings, and those are the, they go with the legal and the law and the labor and services that are provided. Other than that, it's all handled here in the public meetings. And so it's important for the public to look at this and see what it is, in fact, that we've been talking about in these meetings, and take a minute from the public's perspective. They need to take a minute and just go through it and see what all of these different items are. I think the only things that, in fact, I know the only things that have been redacted was the fact that if it gave away somebody's name or if it was in a human resources issue. So from that perspective, I think it's a great thing, and it's something that we all, as Councilor Frass says, we all campaigned on being transparent, and we have been. Contrary to some of the comments that I've seen, we have been extremely transparent in our operations here. So thank you for that. And there's no other comments. I'm going to, Councillor Wilson, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. You should be sorry. You keep ignoring me tonight.
I'm trying not to.
You jumped in on me, but I just want to say that I was going to say after Councillor Frass that it's so important that we have this out there. And thank you again. I will echo your words of thanks to staff for preparing this, because it's time consuming what they did. And I also want to acknowledge your comments about the public taking the time, because it is time consuming to go through and truly understand. It's, people can't be bothered. So it's much, much better if people do take a bit of time to go through, read, understand what we've done and why we made those decisions. And I think that they might feel more at ease with the decisions we've made. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Any other comments? If not, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Mrs. Kelly, you're up.
Thank you, Your Worship. Oops, sorry. So first, I would like to acknowledge that this is definitely a lengthy report, and so I apologize that it's a bit longer than usual. But this report is very important, and it provides council with the final feasibility study on the swimming pool and multiplex. This report was prepared by HDR Architecture, and it's dated December 14th, 2020, and the report releases that information publicly. It's a very large document, and so it is linked on the city's website and will also be on the project website here in a moment. Actually, I think it is already there, but I'm going to be asking the manager of communications to do a demonstration for us here in a second as well as to where all of these documents can be located. So this report by HDR contains a conceptual design for a mixed aquatic and dry land community and recreation facility, which is intended to start the conversation in the community on what this new recreational amenity would look like or could look like. The staff report contains several recommendations, and I just need to advise council that for recommendation number 3, we have actually received an updated report from WSP Canada, the consultants who prepared the environmental overview assessment. And so in the report, it refers to a date of January 25th, and that needs to be amended to reflect a new report dated today, February 1st. The applicant or the consultants changed some of the materials. Basically, they added a map to explain some of the areas that they were referring to in what they call CD 4, 5, and 6. And they also had to remove it had confidential for some reason on the title page, and so that had to be removed. So the recommendation will reflect that change. This feasibility study marks the completion of a significant priority project identified in Council's strategic plan, which was adopted on July 3rd of 2019. And the report seeks direction from Council to advance the project to the design phase, which would include extensive public consultation to build on the initial concept, a detailed professional assessments from a myriad of professionals, the detailed design of the facility based on the public input received and the results of those technical assessments. And grant funding is a major component of the project. In order to seek approvals for funding, a detailed design and identification of a project site are required. If approved by Council today, staff will be uploading a significant amount of information to the Let's Talk Parksville projects portal. So kind of to build on what Councillor Wilson was saying, it will require some time for the public to digest the information. I'm going to ask our communications manager to start preparing to show Council and the public what this site looks like. If the project proceeds, this will serve as a repository for all of the information related to the project, which we expect will be several years in the making. I would say it's important to emphasize that this is the beginning of a lengthy and complex project, and the city will be engaging the services of diverse teams of professionals to provide recommendations to Council throughout and also to the public. This will include things like detailed environmental impact assessments, hydrological and geotechnical assessments, architectural and design expertise, considerations for accessibility, green technology, site servicing on-site, traffic and parking assessments, options for funding and governance, and also operational aspects of the facility. And there will be extensive public engagement at all of these steps. It's also recommended that Council consider establishing a technical working group, which would be comprised of qualified experts to review the detailed design and provide ongoing independent professional advice to Council and the public on things like environmental enhancement and mitigation measures, final facility design, location, and servicing, and both on-site and adjacent implications. This project requires the approval of the electors, so that's a vote by the folks in the city of Parksville. And that would occur when there's more information available to assist people on what the vote would be for. So that would include the final design, costs, and the participants in the service. So that refers to whether or not this is solely a Parksville project or if there's regional participation. In closing, there is a lot of information, and strongly encourage all interested people to read through and see what information has been provided. The study concludes that there is demand for a 6-lane, 25-meter pool with a leisure component, leisure water component, and a dry land community and recreational component as well. Additional details are outlined in the feasibility study and on the Let's Talk Parksville website, which will be basically our main portal to receive information during this COVID restriction time. And then when we are able to gather in person, all of the information will also be uploaded to the site. So with the chair's permission, I'd like to ask our manager of communications to give us an orientation on the site.
Please. Mike.
So Kiva has explained extremely well what is going to be on this site. So what you're seeing now is what the public would see, except it's not uploaded. All right, just give me a sec. I'm sorry. It was supposed to be live. We were going to make it live. What you're not seeing is okay. This is the back end of the, okay. So what you're unfortunately missing is at the very beginning is when you go onto the LTP site, Let's Talk Parksville, you'll see a large, what we call a tile, and that will connect you to the Parksville Aquatic and Recreation Center project. So this is what it looks like. There is seriously a ton of information here. On the right-hand side, we've listed key project documents, the documents that support the feasibility study, the documents that support the Despard test site, and then the original request for proposals from 2019. And so that the list wasn't quite so long, made a section called reference documents, which is things like the RDN reports, the OCP, Mayor's Roundtable results we've put here. They're also referenced earlier on. And staff reports, frequently asked questions, which I'll go over in a minute. Key timelines, because there are so many, we archived the 2019-2020 and then show January and the things that are going to happen in the future. So as we move into these phases, this little dot here blues because we've accomplished it. And so it sort of explains April to June where we hope these things will be accomplished, ongoing these things, moving into fall, and then construction completion. So there are a series of tabs. The first tab is engagement. So its engagement has been split 2021 and then previous engagement, because I think it was important to show people the engagement that's already been held on this project. So that's all here, as well as in the feasibility report. And then the engagement in 2019 relates to the Mayor's Roundtable. Next tab is phase one, kind of how we got here. So it's the context of the project, how the feasibility study came to be. And as I go into these next tabs, and it's the way this software, this engagement software is set up, people then can comment, quick reply, go to discussion. In this section, they'll be able to comment on what they've seen on that page. Phase two is the feasibility study. So it speaks to what's in the feasibility study, how it happened, and again, an opportunity to provide input. And I'll kind of explain, maybe I'll do that. Now, when people comment on this site, and this is also on all the other projects that are on this site, capital projects, fire department recruitment, if people comment, those comments are moderated by a third party, by Engagement XQ. And that's, there are some guidelines when you get further into the site to explain the moderation, how it's done, why it's done, and it's to try and keep it a respectful conversation and dialogue. If someone were to post something that was untoward, the moderator, and it's moderated 24/7, would go back to that person and say, hey, maybe you could think about your comment. Would you like to change it? And give them that opportunity. And that happens before the comment would be posted live. So feasibility study, I explained, proposed site, the proposed test site of Despard. There's a fair bit of information here, and a lot of the links relate to what's in the key documents up at the top, and somebody can add their idea here. And then the last one is financial. And they can ask a question. So that really just speaks to what we know at this point. The cap of 50 million that was placed on the project, and some understanding of next phases with grants and referendum. So it's a fairly robust site, and I look forward to sort of keeping it up to date as we go along, adding things. The report from Kiva's report from today is on here. So it really just puts everything in one place. The frequently asked questions are all here, and I hope they're done in a way for people to understand easily. It's a very organic site. It will change as we go along, and people do not need to sign up to Let's Talk Parksville in order to comment. What they would sign up for, and because you're not seeing the actual live project, is a little widget that sits on the side where they can sign up for updates. So somebody could sign up just for financial updates. Somebody could sign up for engagement. And that's how we will also let people know. There'll be a whole nother section on our engagement activities as we move into that phase. So I think it's exciting. I hope you'll all spend some time on the site, and I hope the public will do the same thing. It needed to be refreshed. Okay, I wondered about that. Okay, any questions?
Questions on this part of it? Go ahead. Councillor Chandler and then Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, through your worship, to Director of Communications, Deb Tardif. More of a comment. I'm very blown away by the work you've done here and the work that your staff has also done. I mean, there's been a whole lot put into this entire thing, and so it's really well done, really well put together, and I think that we got to be really proud of this project and what people have put into it so far from day one. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, and through your worship, to Deb Tardif. Great Dot is a comprehensive survey, all combined with a feedback, everything all together. I'm very impressed. I think it looks great, and it looks very user friendly, which is really important considering, you know. So the thing is, I have a couple questions if I could. I was just making notes here. The comments that show up there type of thing, are they visible for all? Are they going to be a rolling like other media sites type of thing? So you're going to be able to see the comments that were posted? Are they ever going to be like taken to side or how's that going to work?
If I may, Your Worship.
may.
For now, the comments will be visible, but people will, until we really get a sense of the tone and the flavor, people will not be allowed to comment on other people's comments. So there won't be a discussion, a back and forth. That's maybe a conversation that needs to have on Facebook or a forum like that. This is at this point, until we really get into the engagement and we know what we're asking people to comment on, it really is very much a one way. And then if somebody has a question, then I will respond to that. And that's the way the site works now. But the comments are visible. You just can't say, what a dumb idea was that? And that's where that's at right now. That may change as we move on with the platform.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through to Deb as a follow-up. So the comments themselves, like what I really miss is like a town hall format, where people are live in a person type of thing, and then one individual will come up and say one comment type of thing, and then it sparks another individual to say something similar. That's a great idea. What about if we did this type of thing? And that's the kind of electricity I like to see in those types of meetings. I think by having the comments like that, I think you're going to be able to get that. The comments are going to be non-identified. It's not going to be Bob or Cheryl, or are they identified, the comments, or are to the person, or are they anonymous?
They are, in fact, anonymous because you have a username.
Okay.
So you pick a nickname, just as you know, a username as you would on another forum. You don't have to use like Councillor Doug O'Brien.
Okay.
So the comments, you could choose to do that, but otherwise it's a username, and the comments can be anonymous.
Thank you. That's a good idea. And further question?
Let's go around and come back.
Okay, go ahead. Yep.
Councillor Fraz.
Thank you. Just wanted to say through the mayor to Deb Tardif, I really appreciate having the tour of the site like this. It's nice rather than having to go and explore to my own to kind of already know what to expect. I think it's going to help drive a lot more traffic there too, to know what's out there. I see on the website where there's a Let's Talk Parksville link as well on the city website to it too. So yeah, I see this being very useful, and I look forward to how it evolves as well. So thanks for the tour.
Thank you. If I could just say, the information about this project will be on Let's Talk Parksville. The information on our website will be minimal because our website doesn't really have the capacity to do this. And you don't have the capacity to comment or ask questions or provide a story. One of the things I did forget to mention, and because this is in fact an engagement, a public engagement platform, what we can do as we go along is ask like a single question. You don't have to have a survey with 20 questions. We can have a poll. Hey, what do you think about this? And then people can just answer that poll. And that would be one of the reasons you would sign up for updates, so you can sort of be part of the progress of the project.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think we just had to refresh or something, because I went into the Let's Talk Parksville and was able to see everything. It's exciting. I think it's really exciting. It has just a huge amount of information that I think as council we've been working on for well over a year now, and yourself, and so many kudos to so many people. And this is just absolutely amazing. And I put it out on in my Facebook world and everything. And I'm really excited, and I'm really optimistic to see and hope that people will log in and look for information, and we can get feedback and moving forward, because there is, like I said, a ton of information and things that we've been ongoing with, but it's time that Parksville has some questions and feedback on that. So again, thank you.
If I may, Your Worship,
You may.
assuming council moves forward with this, tomorrow we will start, or even maybe this evening, is posting on Facebook so that people will be able to share this link. The Facebook posts are actually, and Twitter are actually written, ready to go. And then over the next couple of weeks, we'll start a fairly strategic marketing of the site to get the word out. We'll do some promoted Facebook ads, that kind of thing, because you just can't take it for granted. It has to be promoted. And the other thing is taking bits and pieces out of the feasibility study, kind of a bit of a did you know? Because we have to start the conversation, and that's, I believe that's what this site has the potential to do.
Thank you. Councillor Greer?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about this. It's long overdue, and I can appreciate all the work that you've done and your staff. You've done a tremendous amount of work. I've been reading forever, since I'm not a fast reader, but it's very informative, and I certainly appreciate all the effort that you and the staff are doing, and I'm sure it'll come to a conclusion next year. Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien, come to you, and then I've just got one comment I want to make. So,
And me.
sorry, Doug, can you? Yeah. Mic's on. There you go.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Your Worship, and through to Deb Tardif again. I noticed on the timeline, Deb, anyway, so it's showing, I think I caught it, you're going pretty fast there for us. April was where you had the advisors working group coming on stream anyways, and I would assume that that's when you've got a good compilation of a lot of comments and so forth. So if maybe this is also through the CAO, I'm not sure which, but what does the advisors working group look like, and where are they coming from, and what do you hope to see there? Thank you.
Just, if I may, it's a great question. But what I'd like to do is, let's get the recommendations on the table, and then we can bring that part up, that question up, because I think it goes with a couple. So if you can hold on to that for a bit, if you would, please. Okay. Last, I think it's important for the public to.
Could I just speak?
I can't see your hand up, so go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I thought you were going around the table. Through your worship. I just have to say to our communications manager, this is absolutely fabulous website. Having worked a bit on a few websites myself, it's so interactive, and I really appreciate it because it's going to help even council members to pull all this material together for us. So the other thing I was thinking when you were talking about letting the public know to Deb, would it be helpful perhaps to put something in our taxes when they're mailed out, a little bit of a note to say, to mention this perhaps? I just thought that might be helpful. So anyway, it's a fabulous site. Thank you so much for doing this. And I'm also extremely excited about this pool. I think it's just fantastic. So thanks for letting me speak, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. I'm going to hold off on my question for the same reason as I asked Councillor O'Brien, because I think they come more in the recommendations. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Now what I'd like to do is call for a mover and a seconder for recommendations 1 through 5. Councillor Chandler, seconded by Councillor. You want it broken out? Certainly. Recommendation number 1, that the report be received. Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Chandler. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Recommendation number 2, that council receive the Parksville Pool and Multiplex Feasibility Study final report. So we're asking for the receiving on the feasibility. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Greer, second by Councillor Chandler. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Number 3, that staff be directed to release the information contained in this report in the list of references and background materials to the Let's Talk Parksville platform. I need a mover and a seconder. Councilor Greer, second by Councilor Fraz. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Number 5, the staff create a project-specific email address and provide online comment opportunities on the project website to allow the public to submit comments on the project with COVID-19 restrictions on gathering in person while gathering in person remains in effect. I need a mover and a seconder for this. Moved by Councilor Chandler, second by Councilor O'Brien. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. And number 5, that council approve the work plan attached Schedule A to this report and direct staff to advance the project to the detailed design stage and prepare requests for proposals to engage consultants. I need a mover and a seconder. Councilor Greer, seconded by Councilor O'Brien. Discussion? I knew that was the one. Yeah. Go ahead, Councilor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. And the reason I wanted to bring this up for a little further discussion anyways is having listened to Deb Tardif's engagement process, I'm so excited about it. But my only suggestion is number 5, I'm a little apprehensive about that we direct staff to proceed along as per Schedule A and the ways to with advancing the project to the design stage. At this point, I would suggest that number 5 could be done partway through. That's why I was asking about the timelines on the April or May and so forth. And the reason is that to go into the design stage or to give approval for staff to go into the design stage, I feel at this time is premature. And I think it's premature for a couple of reasons. And I think the thing is that we need to have full transparency and full input from the public on this. And I know how these things can go. And so the thing is that we have had our recommendations from stakeholders and so forth and ideas, but I feel that this whole thing could take a whole different turn and so forth, which is exactly what we want to happen. We want to give the public what they want. And so the thing is that I think we won't have enough information at this stage to go on to the design stage, because there's many items that are going to come up for discussion that haven't been decided yet, and is whether we're going for the full-on aquatic center, where we're going with a multiplex and so forth. And until that's actually decided, then we don't actually know what site is suitable. So we can't say that this site is suitable or that site's not suitable until we know what the public is saying we're going to build, because basically one takes half an acre and one takes 5 acres and one takes 7 acres. So the thing is that I think it's important that we establish those parameters first, but before we go into design stage. All I'm saying is that we need public engagement, and then when we feel that we have a good handle, then we hand it off. Maybe that's how it was going to happen anyways, whether it's just approval at this time that our CAOs put this in here. But when I looked at Schedule A anyways, I see it's actually going on to design, and I'm not sure that we need to give that approval just yet.
Any other comments? I think, Councilor Fraz, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I have a comment on that. It's probably close in the same line, but if we're gonna have a discussion, I'm happy to listen before I make a comment, to rather get more of the information out there than before I form an opinion. My comment might be then to our CAO through the mayor is if you can just explain that detailed design stage, what that entails and what your request here is really asking for.
Go ahead.
If I may-
That was going to be my point.
Okay, so if I may, Your Worship. So essentially, we are considering the completion of the feasibility study as phase 1. And so that's kind of ended now, and that we've released that information. And so what we would be doing if council wants to proceed to the next phase, we would do an RFP that outlines what the next set of consultants would be doing for the project. And so that includes their design of a very detailed public engagement strategy. So they wouldn't, be putting pen to paper on the drawings or anything at this point. So basically, we would draft the RFP for council's consideration in probably March at this point, and then we would put it out for a couple of months, and then we would get bids, similar to how we did with the feasibility study, where folks would come back with a proposal on how they would get through this process. So the most critical part of that really at the beginning is their public engagement strategy. And we would then be looking to the consultant to run that strategy. The consultant then would also coordinate the hydrogeological studies, the environmental studies, the geotech and the civil, like a lot more of the detail that they would need to assess the site. And then they would start putting pen to paper on the drawings throughout that process when they hear back from people, you know, what final elements they want to see. And when the results of some of those studies come in as well, that will very much inform, you know, what can actually happen where on the site. And then what we would also be doing is all throughout, some of our reps have been appointed to work with the RDN. Staff are also working with the RDN just to keep them informed at the technical level. We've set up monthly meetings just to keep everybody kind of on the same page. And then perhaps to jump ahead and answer the question about the advisory group, what staff is recommending or envisions is that there would be, council would appoint a team of folks who have expertise on those various things. So folks who have the environmental, engineering, civil servicing, land use regulation, like those types of things that we would need. And they would work with the consultant and with council to provide kind of like almost like the advisory design panel does, to provide an expert opinion on all of the elements of the project as it goes through, so that you have that extra kind of group of experts that can say, yes, this is a great idea, or we saw, you know, this be tackled in another way somewhere else, or, you know, it just sort of gives you that almost like an audit of what's being proposed by the consultants. And then council would appoint the people to that, but we would advertise for it just like you would for a position. And the folks would have to prove their expert qualifications. And so those things would all kind of happen together. But for us, the consultant is a key component of that to kind of coordinate everything and liaise with us and with council and the public. So that's kind of the rationale, but you know, certainly we could, if council wished, February, March could just be moved forward. Like we could take a month before staff brings back the RFP, or several months, however many months you want. But basically, when we're getting to the public engagement, we were hoping to have the consultant lead that, just so that it's a neutral party that's doing that. But hopefully that addresses the question.
Thanks. Councillor O'Brien, go ahead.
Thank you for that. And that really maybe defines anyways, the timeline is what I was worried about. The timeline, and certainly not any problem at this time to put out RFPs for consultants, because I know that's a bit of a process as well. So the consultants are just going to be in place, ready to go when we're ready to go. And I certainly have no problem with that at all. And but my only worry is that you know, pen is going to go to paper, and we're going to start drawings type of thing before we've exhausted the full consultation process with the public. And I think it's really important that we do that. And we have what we call the test site. And so the thing is that I understand with the geotech and the environmental studies are there. And if that's what we need our consultants to look at, if that is indeed going to be the site. But I think that until we determine that 100%, then it's just a waste of money for them to be considering it for that particular time, right? So I'm just saying that I think once we get the as you say, I would say just before your advisors advisory working group all together type of thing with your experts type of thing, I think at that time, then they're the ones that are going to be saying to the whoever is fortunate with the RFP, the consultants are going to say, okay, we're the group, we've taken all this information, this is what we've come up with. At that time, I think it would be wise then to say, okay, start. What worried me was when it said the detailed design stage. That was the terminology that set me back. So if we could have that after, that would be great.
I knew that was where we were going to run into a bit, because as soon as you put the words design in there, you start to run into an issue. Might I suggest an amendment to that last one, if I may, and read something along, and I just threw this together, so bear with me, but the request, the council, wait a minute, put my glasses on. The council approved the work attached as Schedule A to this report and directs staff to the request for proposals to engage a consultant so that project can be advanced to the design stage upon completion with public consultation. Would that meet with everybody's satisfaction? All right, so I'm making that amendment and a motion for that amendment. I need a seconder. Seconded by Councillor O'Brien. All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. So now we can vote on or further discuss the amendment as amended, or the motion as amended, rather. Yeah, Councillor Krass?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for Councillor Bryan for bringing that forward, because those are the same kind of concerns that I have and the community would have. There is when it speaks to detailed design, it sounds like you're coming up with everything that's going to be in place. So I appreciate you clarifying there what it means by that. And I think this amendment speaks to it. So it is something that I'm comfortable with. And yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. I think it's going to be important for the public, and especially in the first stages for Let's Talk, is that they use that Let's Talk Parksville method rather than sending each of us emails so that they're all over the place and everybody's getting different pieces of information. If we can funnel all of the information through the facilities that have been provided, I think that's really important in the future. So from that perspective, I would ask the public to work on that. A couple of things, if I may, I just have a couple of comments. First off, I just want to take a moment to thank staff. This has been going on since January 2019. They have worked so very hard at getting it to where we are, and we're just beginning the journey here. And you know, as has been mentioned a couple times, this is still got a long ways to go. All we've done is put the proposal, as we said we would do when we were elected. We said that we were going to bring a proposal forward for the public, but this is a public consultation process from here forward, and it's going to be very, very important that we listen to everybody and come up with what we're going to do. We don't have a final budget, and I know that's going to go through and it's going to be all over the place about this and that, but the reality is we won't have a budget until we decide, until the public actually decides what it is that we're going to go forward with. And once we have that, then we can establish a budget. Then we can start to fix how much do we need for grants. Are we going to do this with the region? Are we going to do it on our own? How much is it going to affect the taxes? We don't have any of those answers right now because we aren't at that stage. We put an artificial number of $50 million on there just to keep a cap on it, to keep it at a certain spot. But you know, it could be anywhere from 0 to 50 million. Who knows where it's going to be when we're all said and done. The most important thing for people to remember is that this has to go to a referendum of the public. And if we do it ourselves, then it comes to a referendum of Parksville. If the region does it, then it'll involve all the electoral areas in the area that will be involved with it, as well as in all of Oceanside will have to pass it. So from that perspective, you know, this is just starting. You know, we're going to be a long ways before we hit that finish line, but it is the largest infrastructure project this city has ever seen. And I think that's really important to remember. And I'm really proud of how much the staff has brought this to where it is. So thank you very much for that. So having said all of that, thank you. And let's move on to the next item. Notices of motion. I need any members to have any notices of motion. Councilor Frass, how did I know?
Well, I circulated a notice of motion earlier so
Yes.
that everyone would have a heads up on it too. Should have it on your desk there. And if council would entertain it, we could take it tonight if everyone's in agreement, or we could just go forward to our next meeting. I do think it ties into a lot of the work that we're doing though. I'll read you the motion, then we can decide if take it tonight or later. Is that the process? Or?
Sure, go ahead. And then we'll call a vote on whether you want to do it now or later.
The notice of motion is that staff report back to council the options on hosting a town hall or series of town hall meetings with a focus and priority for Parksville residents by virtual means or otherwise, and provide possibilities for dates and topics that could be a benefit and interest of the public.
Fair enough. So let's go, let's handle the easy part first. I need a unanimous vote to handle that motion today. And so if you're making that to unanimously handle it tonight, then we'll need a seconder for that. Councillor O'Brien, discussion on unanimously handling it. Councillor Greer, have you got your hand up for discussion?
Thank you, Your Worship. The only thing I question is the series of town hall meetings.
Oh, wait a minute. Well, we're not into that part yet. We're just deciding whether we're going to handle it tonight or the next one. Sorry. All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor of handling it tonight? All right, it's unanimous, so we can move forward. Now we move the motion, and we need a seconder for that motion. Councillor, I'm going to give it to Councillor O'Brien because he was involved in this originally. So Councillor O'Brien will second it. Discussion, please. Councillor Fraz, you're first.
So I wanted to bring this motion forward because I think it could be a great benefit to our community for exploring new ways to communicate, share a bit of what we do, and get feedback and input from the public, as well as clarify any questions they might have. I realize we have platforms like the Let's Talk Parksville, and I think this is something that's going to complement it and that we could combine into there to be of use. One of my primary disappointments before being elected to council was the fact that council meetings are for council and for public to observe, and for public hearings that we saw today, they're for the public to talk and for us to listen. It doesn't allow a lot of that two-way dialogue. And I think what it does in that case is it forces the community dialogue to places like Facebook. And on Facebook, we see people post their opinions in hopes that it's listened to and understood by others. And often they hope that it catches the attention of council. Now, with COVID here, it makes it a lot more difficult to have these kind of dialogues that we like to have. And it's even harder now as we find people adapt to new technologies. But we didn't ask for COVID to happen. But I do think that we can and that we must do better to give our residents a voice away from disruptive personalities, a lot of them who don't even live here, but they'd like to interfere with their community. And they end up creating a lot of noise and confusion that benefits nobody except for their own self-interest. I have faith that if we bring Parksville residents together and focus on Parksville residents, then the conversation will be a whole lot more respectful and useful than what we've seen online. At the very least, we can have a much clearer understanding of what Parksville residents want, and we can be able to respond to the truth of our residents instead of the people from out of town trying to influence the decisions that we make for our residents. I want our residents to know that they have a seat at this table. They always have, and that we are listening and encourage dialogue and understanding. We've done a lot in this council to bring transparency and community involvement, and I think we can keep that effort going if we improve on it through things like a town hall.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments? Councillor O'Brien?
Thank you, Your Worship. And to echo somewhat Councillor Fraz, but by virtue of we even had the opportunity, this council did, by taking our council meetings on the road. And we did that in the past through the Lena School and through Knox United. And it was in an excellent format. And I truly miss that as well, because it lets us engage with the public. As Councillor Fraz says, it's a two-way conversation. It's not one listening and one speaking. And that's what I truly miss in our term here, that we haven't been able to do that. So the only other thing I would hope that we would be able to engage maybe the services and advice of our communications director, Deb Tardif, on how we could do this in this pandemic world that we seem to have fallen into. As Councillor Fraz's motion mentioned, by virtual means or otherwise, maybe, we hear multiple Zoom meetings, multiple town halls and so forth. For her to kind of give us some advice on the greatest options to conduct these town hall meetings, with her advice, I think is moving in the right direction. And then we can decide on the topics. And as to Councillor Greer's questions that may be coming up, a series of them, I think the series would be determined, I would hope, would be based on topics of issue, current topics and so forth, and maybe a little bit of, just a question and answer informal period about, people asking, what have planned and what our strategic plan looks like and how we hope to achieve it. So I think it's really important that we move on this because we need to engage our public and they us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Griffin and Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. No, I agree with the town hall meetings. I'm in favor of that. I was just wondering, when you talk about a series, how many you intend to do in a year? You can probably overcook something as well. I would suggest probably one every 6 months or one every 4 months or so. But I just wanted to ask that question, what you mean by a series of town hall meetings.
I can answer.
I think that's going to you, Councillor.
So I put in there a series just so that we are not limited to just one. I think that there might be multiple topics that come up, and it's not to say that we're nailing ourselves to, saying that we're going to do them every month or so on, but whether it's staff recommendations or kind of just as required that we have this kind of avenue to do it. There was things like the development by the beach club when we get people are confused on what that development process looks like. Maybe those are items that we want to be able to discuss in town hall and have that kind of two-way dialogue. So it kind of leaves it open-ended. Is it going to be every season, like quarterly, or, so series just means that more than one to be anticipated.
Councillor Patterson and Councillor. How come I don't see your hand up? Okay. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Worship. So I'm very much in favor of engagement and conversation and two-way conversation especially, and that. So I do have one or two concerns. So I'm just going to put them out there and then maybe direct through the mayor back to our CAO and continue with that. So while I understand the need to have discussion because there's so much misinformation, and Councillor Fraz spoke on one specific that I know that there's a great deal of misinformation when it comes to development and what can be applied, like with the OCP, and he made a great analogy with the beach hotel and that. My concern is that we have looked at our 5 kind of strategic priorities, and I don't want to sway into other areas, and I also don't want to add to what we looked at in great depth and everything in December of our priorities and what we were going to keep on the table and what we were going to take off the table so that staff could move forward. And so I know that we are limited a great deal with some of our staff time and availability. So there's that. And I also know that even just today, Zoom is a bit challenging, and that was with under 20 people. And so there's a lot of guidelines that are going to be required. And I anticipate that we will probably have a budgetary cost and that as well that needs to be looked at. So those are some of my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. And actually, Councillor Patterson voiced basically what I was concerned about is how we're going to control what we speak about and what the important topics that perhaps seem to have brought the greatest amount of confusion from residents as per our letters that we've received. So perhaps that's something that staff might help us decide the topics that seem to be the most important, and how I agree with Councillor Greer. How are we going to limit our time? Because it does cost money, but we need this. So Councillor Fraz, you did a great job of explaining why we need this, and thank you for that. So I'm all for it, but I think that we may have to discuss how we're going to, with staff, how we're going to go about this so that we don't detract from other projects that are on the go as well. But it's a good idea to have it. So thank you.
Thank you. I think it's an amazingly good idea. It's something that we need in this community right now, something we haven't been able to put together for the last 12 months or so when we've been into this COVID part. There are ways to do it. It's being done all over the place now. It just recently is starting to become more evident. It's going to take a little bit of work to get it there in the first place, but once we get there, I think we around this table are going to decide when we get together and how often we have these meetings. If we see that we're having the same concerns from the public, then we should call a public meeting so that we can explain ourselves and they can ask us questions. We've seen it just happen recently with the beach property, the beachfront property, where, you know, once you sat down and explained to people what the issues were, everybody seemed to be relatively okay with what was happening. I mean, they didn't like it, but they were okay. They understood why the city had to take the approach that the city had to take. So I think from all of that, it's we can decide ourselves. And I think for the first couple of months, we're going to, yeah, we might see one a month going down the tubes because we've got, you know, the PCC, we've got the beach property, we've got the swimming pool part coming up. All of those probably will warrant at some point in time over the next 90 days or 120 days will require some type of public consultation. So once we get past that, maybe we don't need it for 3 months or 4 months. Who cares at that point? It's what the public is telling us they need it for. So I agree wholeheartedly. I'm going to support this motion. I think it's a great idea. So, Councillor Greer.
Yeah, I think you touched on something that's important when you mentioned the PCC building. I think we have to be awfully careful that we don't open up another can of worms. So, you know, once we've made a decision, then I think it's better to leave it alone rather than go on and on and on. And this can happen just because some of the people in the city don't like what we're doing. Once we've made a decision, it's made. And I don't think we should keep opening up something that could be another can of worms.
Sorry, sorry, Councillor Greer, it was meant as an example, not as a fact of any sort. So we will decide when it comes up time what we bring up at the discussion. Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to go through you to Councillor Fraz that really pleased that this motion came forward. I think everybody needs this. I think also there's a lot of things that are very dynamic, and it's a large umbrella that we cast out there as far as even the strategic priorities. They all have so many fingers to them and so many umbrella pieces. So I'm pleased to see that we can sort of manage issues that the public find as either extraordinary or things that need to be dealt with over a period of time. So I'm glad that this will be something we can put in place, and hopefully it goes right through to our, even though the pandemic would finish, I'd still like to see it as a process continuing on for the next 24 months.
Councillor Fraz.
Just one last thing I want to say, and it's a little bit too, thanks to Councillor Chandler, and it's a little bit response to Councillor Greer. There is, when you talk about things that may not be comfortable or that might already made decisions on, part of what really made me think about this town hall kind of a concept was before we got elected, when there was things like the Orca Place contention in the community and people feeling like there wasn't enough information out there. What ended up happening is we ended up renting out the Legion and hosting our own kind of town hall. We got hundreds of people that came on out. We had panel of speakers up there to share a bunch of information. We brought as much information we could possibly get. And if we don't facilitate those kind of conversations, as uncomfortable as they may be, they're going to happen regardless. And that's why right now I think they are happening on Facebook. We need to be able to do it in a way where even if we don't like what we hear, we have to be willing to hear it, because while it could be hard to deal with the truth at times, it's much harder to deal with things that aren't the truth. And I think right now there's a lot of mistruth coming out from outside of our community and steering the conversations.
Fair enough. Let's call the question. Everybody's had a part of it. So I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion? Unanimous. Thank you. All right, moving right along. New business. Any new business that we want to talk about? I noticed Councilor O'Brien just checking the time to make. All right. We then will go for the next part of this question. Before we proceed to our special business, I'd like to remind public that our next regular meeting of council will be held on Wednesday, February the 17th, 2021 at 3 p.m. Remember, that's Wednesday, okay, because of the holiday. And I need a mover and a seconder so that we can, pursuant to section 91A and K of the Community Charter, council proceed to a closed meeting to consider items relating to personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality and the proposed provisions of a municipal service. Moved by Councilor Greer, seconded by Councilor Chandler. All those in favor? We're going into close.